The whole wild population of Snowdonia hawkweed went from 7 mountain ledges down to maybe 6 plants on one cliff. Its genus has over 10,000 species names, making it the messiest group in all of botany, and a Netflix show gave this flower magic powers to bring a dead man back to life. So, how did a small yellow weed on a Welsh cliff end up as one of the rarest plants on Earth? In this video, we break down how Snowdonia hawkweed lives without pollination, versus how sheep almost killed it, versus how a garden is trying to clone it back, and why botanists say this tiny flower changes what we know about extinction. Snowdonia hawkweed looks like a weed you'd step on, but its story is unbelievable. A guy named John Griffith found this plant on mountain ledges back in the 1880s, and right now the whole wild population is about 6 plants on one cliff in North Wales, and you're about to find out how it got that bad. Think of a small plant about 12 inches tall with bright yellow flowers sticking off thin stems, a bunch of leaves at the bottom, and little black hairs all over the stems and leaf backs. You would walk right past it. You would think someone dropped dandelion seeds on a rock. That is what one of the rarest living things on Earth looks like when you are standing next to it. 2 experts named Peter Sell and Cyril West gave it official species status in the 1950s, and here is the number that makes the whole thing real. Records show this plant only ever lived on 7 mountain ledges in Snowdonia. Nowhere else on the planet. Not 7 mountains, not 7 valleys, 7 ledges. That was the entire world from the start. By 1953, it was gone. Scientists looked for decades, found nothing, and called it extinct. Then in July 2002, a team from the National Museums of Wales spotted it again on a steep cliff inside Sir Idwal Nature Reserve near Bethesda. 3 plants. That was the whole comeback. The thing that almost killed it was not a disease or a building project. It was something you see in every farm field. You see sheep everywhere in Wales. So how did they almost wipe out the rarest flower in the country? Sheep. That is the answer. Sheep almost ate this plant off the face of the earth. After World War II, farmers stopped watching their flocks the old way. Sheep spread out across the Welsh mountains on their own, moved up higher, and started eating through ledges where rare plants had been sitting safe since the Ice Age. The math is simple. Sheep skip boring grass when they can eat tasty flowers instead. Hawkweeds are delicious to sheep, and in any spot they could reach, they ate every last one. 7 ledges went to 0 plants found in under 50 years. The only reason the species made it at all is the last few plants ended up on cliffs so steep that no sheep could get there. Wildlife groups have now kicked sheep out of the area around Sir Idwal to let the plants recover. That move tells you everything about how close it came to being gone for good. But the way this plant makes copies of itself is the part that really bends the rules, because it does something most plants never do. How does this flower make seeds without pollen? And why does that make every plant an exact copy? Most flowers need pollen from another plant to make seeds. Genes mix, and the baby plant comes out different from mom and dad. Snowdonia hawkweed skips all of that. It does something called apomixis. That just means it makes seeds on its own with no help. No pollen needed, no father plant. The seed grows into an exact copy of the mother. Same DNA every time. Every single baby plant is a clone. Here is the fun part. Gregor Mendel, the guy who figured out how genetics work using pea plants, actually tried the same experiments with hawkweeds. The results made no sense, and he started questioning everything he had discovered. It took other scientists until 1903 to figure out that hawkweeds copy themselves through seeds. So of course, Mendel's crossing experiments never worked. There was no real crossing happening. Snowdonia hawkweed flowers in July and drops seeds about a month later. But it doesn't do this every year. Some seasons it just does not bother making fruit. So you have 6 plants in the wild, every one of them carrying the same DNA. And the species does not even produce seeds on a regular schedule. That cloning trick keeps the plant alive, but it also means one disease could take out every single individual at once because they have no genetic variety at all. Why is the cliff where this plant lives so hard to reach that scientists need ropes just to count it? Saardwam Idwal Nature Reserve sits between mountain peaks over 3,000 feet high, and the ledges where this hawkweed grows are not places you can walk to with normal shoes and a notebook. This was the very first nature reserve in all of Wales, set up back in 1954. Charles Darwin came here to study rocks. The place looks like a giant bowl carved out by a glacier, with huge cliffs, piles of broken rock, and a dark lake that old stories say no bird will fly over because a Welsh prince was drowned in it. In 2002, the search team found 3 plants on steep ground. By 2021, people counted what looked like 6, which means it might have doubled in 20 years. But the spot is so hard to get to that nobody can say for sure all 6 are actually Snowdonia hawkweed without bringing in professional climbers with ropes. One botanist said he found the plants right on the edge of a cliff face. That is the whole catch. The cliff kept sheep from eating the last plants, but it also means nobody can check on the survivors without risking harm to the ground they grow on. Ice climbers who dig their tools into the turf up there rip out rare plants without even knowing. That is why the reserve put in temperature sensors to warn climbers when the ground is too soft to climb on safely. The real safety net for this species is not on a mountain. It is in a greenhouse miles away. If only 6 plants are left in the wild, why is a greenhouse full of seedlings? The real plans B. Seeds from the wild plants got sent to the National Botanic Garden of Wales. Staff there grew 26 baby plants from those seeds. That little group of greenhouse plants is now the backup plan for the whole species. Seeds also got stored at the Millennium Seed Bank, frozen as a last resort. The idea is simple. Keep enough living plants and saved seeds around so that if the cliff plants die, you still have a way to start over. But here is the problem nobody likes to talk about. This plant does not do well when you grow it indoors. It needs the exact cold, the exact rock, the exact amount of water it gets on a north-facing cliff in Wales, and a greenhouse cannot match all of that perfectly. The goal is to put plants back on all 7 ledges where they used to grow. But that only works if you keep sheep away from every single one of those spots. And right now, nobody has agreed to do that at all 7. One plant expert said it best: getting them back everywhere would be great, but you have to deal with the grazing problem first or nothing will work. Then a TV show picked up this story and did something nobody in the plant world expected. How did a plant with only 6 survivors end up in a Netflix show about Sherlock Holmes? Raising the Dead. In 2021, a Netflix show called The Irregulars, a Sherlock Holmes story with magic and monsters, made Snowdonia hawkweed a big part of the plot. A character in the show uses the plant in a potion to rebuild a dying man from stolen body parts. They even named a whole episode after the scientific name, Hieracium snowdoniense. A plant with 6 living copies got its own episode title on one of the biggest streaming platforms in the world. In the show, Sherlock Holmes figures out the clue because the hawkweed only grows on one impossible cliff in Wales, so whoever had it must have known exactly where to find it. Real plant scientists had thoughts about this. One expert who had actually visited the wild plants said hawkweeds were used in old medicine for breathing and kidney problems, but nothing anywhere close to bringing dead people back. Still, the show did something no news article ever pulled off. It made millions of people hear the name Snowdonia hawkweed for the first time. People started posting online that they had the same plant in their yard. They did not. The hawkweed family is huge, and dozens of lookalikes trick people every day. But regular viewers suddenly caring about a dying Welsh flower because of a TV drama is a weird and kind of beautiful win. The real science behind this plant family is even stranger than the show. Why do scientists keep arguing about whether there are 800 or 10,000 hawkweed species? And why does it matter? The hawkweed group called Hieracium has over 10,000 species names written down. Some experts say only about 800 of those are real species. Others say thousands are valid. They have been fighting about this for over 100 years. The reason is the cloning. When every plant copies itself through seeds, each little group that grows in a different spot and changes even a tiny bit can be called its own species. Groups that would normally blend together through regular reproduction stay locked apart as separate lines forever, and nobody agrees on where to draw the cut. This is not just a science argument. It matters for real money and real protection. If every small group counts as a species, there are a shocking number of hawkweeds in danger in Britain alone. Wales has several that are down to a handful of plants, like Black Mountain hawkweed with 13 plants at one spot, and Beacon's hawkweed that was down to one single plant before someone rescued its seeds. Snowdonia. Hawkweed is not the only rare one. Lots of hawkweeds are rare. This one just has a story wild enough that normal people found out about it. But the place where this plant grows holds something even older and stranger than the hawkweed itself. You walk past these Welsh mountains every summer, but plants from the Ice Age are still alive up there. Snowdonia hawkweed lives next to a group of plants that have been growing on these cliffs since glaciers melted thousands of years ago. These are leftovers from a frozen world, species that used to be common everywhere but moved uphill as things warmed up. The Snowdon lily sits on the same rocks and grows nowhere else in Britain. Purple saxifrage blooms as early as February. Tufted saxifrage almost got wiped out by collectors in the 1800s who grabbed rare plants the way tourists grab souvenirs. They all hang onto ledges that stay just cold enough and just high enough to keep Ice Age life going in today's warm world. These places are protected by law, and once they are gone, they are gone. There is no rebuilding them. One boot stamp on soft ground or one rock kicked loose by a hiker destroys decades of slow growth in a second. These plants grow by millimeters each year, but they can be wiped out in moments. That gap between how slow recovery is and how fast damage happens tells the whole Snowdonia hawkweed story in one line. Before you ignore another yellow weed, think about why only 6 of these are left on the whole planet. People walk past hawkweeds every day in Britain without a second look. They look like dandelions. They grow in lawns and along roads. Nobody cares about them. But this one lives nowhere on Earth except one cliff in one valley in one park in one corner of Wales. It was always confined to a tiny handful of rock shelves. 6 plants, maybe less right now, sitting on cold rock doing the quiet work of staying alive while sheep and weather and rising temperatures push against them from every side. It does not need pollen. It does not need a mate. It copies itself, drops seeds into the wind and hopes for a good year. The growing season is short. The cliff is brutal. That means the margin for error is basically 0. 26 baby plants sit in a greenhouse down in Carmarthenshire. Seeds sit frozen in a bank. A Netflix character used this flower to solve a fake murder. And real scientists still cannot get to the cliff often enough to tell you if those 6 plants are growing or slowly dying where nobody can see. That is the whole story. A 12-inch yellow flower you would pull out of your yard without a second thought, and it is one of the rarest living things on the face of the earth. If you want more breakdowns like this, where a yellow weed on a cliff turns out to be an Ice Age survivor that sheep almost ate into nothing, and then a Sherlock Holmes show turned into a plot twist, hit that subscribe button. I will keep bringing you the real stories behind plants that look like nothing but turn out to be something incredible. We will see you in the next video.